Hi, thank you for joining me today. Today we're doing some training on child sexual abuse in the music, acting and modelling agency. Okay, so firstly, if you haven't done my last training, which is available on Patrice's project, you may not know my name or my background. So just to do a bit of introduction, my name's Amina Begum. I'm based in the UK. I'm a clinical supervisor as well as a clinical psychotherapist. How long have I been working for? Just over 10 years. I work with a lot of issues related to trauma, sexual abuse, working with both male and female survivors of sexual abuse. The training I've done on Patrice's project about the impact on sexual abuse, if you haven't done it yet, do check it out. Why? Because there's tons of information and tons of skills that you can learn, that you can apply when supporting yourself and maybe somebody else who is a survivor of sexual abuse or who may be at risk of sexual abuse, or even to prevent sexual abuse. So maybe, you want to just check the trainings out and, educate yourself on the topic, raise awareness. There's also a certificate available, a free certificate, just to confirm and evidence your learning. Okay, so in today's training, I'm going to be focusing specifically on child sexual abuse in the music, acting, and modelling industry. When I use the term children, what I'm referring to is anyone under the legal age of 18 years old. Therefore, the responsibility for a child's well-being and their safety belongs to the parent or parents, to the carer, or legal guardian. Once again, today's training comes with a trigger warning, as you may find some contents upsetting or triggering. If you need to take a pause, that's absolutely fine. Take your time, take a break, do the training with somebody that you feel safe with. If that will be, will help you, will be reassuring for you, that's absolutely fine. Get comfortable, grab yourself a warm drink. It's important that you feel relaxed. The more relaxed you are, the more information you'll be able to absorb and the more focused you'll be. Okay. So firstly, I want you to imagine what it may be like for a child or the child's parent or carer who gets offered to work in any or all of the mentioned industries. If you were a child, how do you think you would feel? Or if you were the parent or legal guardian of a child who's being offered, to work in the music industry, acting, modelling industry? Excited? Shocked? Ecstatic? Proud? And why not? This could potentially be a life-changing experience for the child and their family. So just to question you further, how do you know that the child is or will be safe from any form of sexual abuse in any one of these industries? Well, the truth is we can never be 100% sure what anyone is capable of. And perpetrators of sexual abuse can go to many lengths to hide the abuse, to hide what they're doing. Why? Because number one, they don't want to get caught. And, if they do have a status, if they do have a lot to lose, then that's even more reason for them to not want to get caught. So they'll go to a lot of lengths. There might be manipulation involved. There might be threats involved. There could be lots of other things that they do, like putting the blame on the child, silencing the child or the family members. So there might be a lot of ways that the perpetrator will want to keep the abuse secret. And of course, because, they don't want to get caught and they want to continue abusing. Therefore, it's vital and important to educate ourselves on sexual abuse and raise awareness, to be assertive and develop relevant skills so we can do our best to identify, to prevent, and to limit the impact of sexual abuse on children. And this is what we'll be focusing on today. If you've done my last training, or if you've done sort of your own research on sexual abuse, You may be aware of the definition of sexual abuse and the importance of sexual consent. The age of consent varies from state to state in America, so do check this out for where you are. However, I'd like to get one very important and serious yet simple fact out the way, that a child under the age of consent can never agree to any form of sexual contact. Why? Because they're a child, simple. And if they are at an age of consent, but they're not the legal age of an adult, which is 18, we need to also take the following factors into account, because this will help you to identify and prevent sexual abuse. Does a child understand what sexual abuse is? So bearing in mind, we're thinking about a child who's at the age of consent. Now, this might be 16 or 17, depending on the state you're in, but the legal age is 18. So what we're looking at is, does this child who's at the age of consent understand what sexual abuse is, what sexual contact is? Does the child have any disabilities, cognitive impairments, which can affect the child's understanding of sexual abuse or about the age of consent? Does the child know how to communicate what is happening to them? So although there might be the age of consent, there might be sexual abuse involved, there might be inappropriate sexual contact, and the child may not understand. So it's really important that even if they are at the age of consent, they understand actually what's happening. Are they actually consenting to any form of sexual contact? They may not be aware of what words to use or what language to use to communicate what's happening to them. So again, it's really important to talk about this subject with the child. The child might be frightened to tell anyone about the abuse. If there's threats involved by the abuser or somebody else, then this may add a factor to why the child is not disclosing. The child might feel guilty or ashamed about the sexual abuse and not tell anybody. Or the child might feel that they won't be believed if they do tell an adult. If there's manipulation or punishment involved by the abuser or somebody else, and this can cause a child to feel confused or frightened, which can also lead to further silencing. For example, if the abuser is saying things like, well, you wanted it, you wanted me to do this to you, or making threats, saying, if you tell anybody, I'm going to harm your family. So this can cause a lot of confusion for the child and can lead a child to internalize their experience and not tell anybody about what's going on. Okay, I'm now going to talk about the freeze state during sexual abuse. The freeze state is an automatic brain response to a stressful or traumatic event, and sexual abuse can be a very traumatic experience for a child. There's also survival states of fight and flight, which I talked more in detail about in my first training, but I'm going to focus on freeze for now. So when an individual experiences trauma, a frightening, threatening, or distressing situation, the brain will respond automatically to help the individual survive the distress, to survive the trauma. That's the job of the brain, that's what it does. So it will act instinctively and instantly. So when applying this survival strategy to a child, the child would literally freeze or may go limp during the sexual abuse, which can prevent movement, even speaking out, shouting out, fighting back. They may also go numb or disconnect from their body, and this is a way to disconnect from reality. Again, it's a survival strategy. And another survival strategy I'd like to discuss with you is a survival state of friend. Now, the survival state of friend, again, it can happen instantly and instinctively when a child is feeling threatened or feeling quite frightened, or there's trauma involved. And what happens is a child becomes compliant to the abuser. So they will do what the abuser tells them to do. They might agree with the abuser, they might go along with what the abuser wants them to do, or, what's going on in terms of the abuse. They might comply to what's happening. And the reason for that, again, it's survival. The child is in survival state. They just want to survive. So instinctively and instantly, the brain responds like that. And the reason I feel it's important to discuss these two survival states specifically is to help you understand some of the automatic physiological mechanisms in our brain and body. And that it isn't the child's fault if the child can't or doesn't run, doesn't scream, shout, or fight back during sexual abuse, or if the child becomes compliant to the abuse out of fear. Because I hear time and time again from adult survivors of child sexual abuse how they blame themselves for not being able to do anything during sexual abuse, or they couldn't say anything, or why they didn't fight back. This results in a lot of guilt and a lot of shame, which isn't theirs to carry. Or their families might even blame them or challenge them and say, well, why didn't you say anything? You never spoke up, so how are we supposed to know it's your fault? We need to understand, firstly, what's going on for that child, what was going on for that individual when they were being abused. It's not just about, they didn't speak out or fight back. It's trying to get an understanding of what was going on for them in that moment. What was their bodily response? What was their physiological response to the fear and the trauma? So just to recap on the definitions of child sexual abuse, this can be committed directly via unwanted physical sexual contact, which may involve oral, anal, or vaginal unwanted sexual contact, penetration using the penis, digital penetration, and or penetration using objects may be used, fondling and, kissing the child. That's another form of unwanted sexual contact. Sexual abuse also involves child marriages, female genital mutilation, and child sexual trafficking and exploitation. Child sexual abuse can also be non-directive and non-penetrative. What this means is like forcing a child to watch pornographic content or images, being naked in front of a child, masturbating in front of a child, forcing or coercing a child to behave in a sexually inappropriate way, like, taking sexually explicit photographs or videos, carrying out sexual activities in front of a child, using sexual language with a child or in front of a child. And the reason it's important for us to get an understanding is so you can identify if any of these come to surface for you, or if you notice any of these, you can be very quick to recognize that sexual abuse, that's what's happening here. So how can you identify a perpetrator of sexual abuse? What does an abuser of sexual abuse look like? I wonder what image comes to your mind when I say this. Now, how many times have you seen a documentary, watched the news, the media, or heard from another person about a case of child sexual abuse and were shocked as it wasn't someone you would have ever thought could commit such a crime, or it was somebody in a position of power, somebody with a high status, reputation, somebody famous who was the abuser? I certainly can think of many cases. Therefore, would you agree that anybody can be an abuser? Anybody can be a perpetrator of sexual abuse, despite their race, religion, colour, status, position in society, how nice or compassionate they may come across, etc. and etc. So it's really important that we widen our understanding of what a sexual or who a sexual predator might be or look like. It can be anybody, and this is why we need to have our alerts on. The more we understand, the more we have awareness, the more we can be assertive. It's also very important and vital for us to remember that sexual abuse is not only committed by males. Females can also commit acts of sexual abuse, and sometimes there may be more than one perpetrator. So whose responsibility is it to protect and safeguard a child? The responsibility lies with the parent, the legal guardian, or carer. Now, the carer, this may be an adult who steps in at any time with the parents' or legal guardian's consent like an aunt, an uncle, grandparent, father, auntie, even a family friend. But somebody that, the parent, a legal guardian, who they trust their child with. But most importantly, somebody that the child also feels safe with and trusts. Why? Because when there's safety, there's trust. When there's trust, the child is more likely to feel comfortable and share any issues or any problems that they're going through. So what can you do to raise awareness, identify and prevent child sexual abuse? In these industries, the music, acting and modeling world, how can you be more assertive? How can you, have your radars on? Okay, so firstly, be aware that the sexual abuser may be someone directly in the industry or connected to the industry, someone who may be in a position of power or trust, have a high status, reputation, or may not. It's important to be open-minded and assertive to all and anyone who comes into contact with the child, because you as the adult need to be the child's eyes, ears and voice. You need to act on behalf of that child, because a child may not have the awareness, the skills or understanding that you and I may have as an adult regarding sexual abuse. Educate yourself about child sexual abuse. The more aware you are about the topic, the more you'll be able to be assertive and respond effectively and safely when it comes to any related issues or concerns. There's so much information and training on Patrice's projects about sexual abuse and the grooming processes. Do the training. It's absolutely free. You have nothing to lose and so much to gain. There's even a certificate, a free certificate that you can get afterwards to evidence your learning. Ensure that anyone you entrust your child with, that they too do the training. They can get the certificate afterwards, and this can evidence their learning as well. This may sound a bit extreme, but child sexual abuse and the impact of child sexual abuse can be extreme. Therefore, it's something we need to take seriously. And for me, it is a very serious topic. It's a very serious issue. The effects of sexual abuse can impact a child mentally, psychologically, emotionally, physically, sexually, socially. This can feed into the child's life as they grow up and affect other areas of their lives, like having healthy relationships, focusing on studies, maintaining jobs, finances, having a healthy life. There's so many areas that it can feed into, almost like a ripple effect. The impact can be huge and can last a lifetime. Therefore, yeah, I do feel the matter needs to be taken seriously to prevent and reduce the impact. This way, everyone involved in safeguarding a child are all informed about sexual abuse, and hopefully they can apply the necessary skills and tools when required. Talk to the child about appropriate and healthy sex. Something that happens with consent. Something that happens when the child has consent and understanding of what sexual contact is. And it's something, that's done with choice and at an appropriate age. Discuss the age of consent and why it's important. Talk to the child about body boundaries, that it's their body and no one has the right to touch their body or look at or touch their private parts. And no one should tell the child to touch someone else's private parts or show the child any sexual content or images on mobile phones, TV, the internet, tablets, magazines, books, wherever. No, it's nobody should. The child should not be exposed to any form of sexual content at all. Teach the child that body secrets are not okay. And if anybody tells a child to keep a secret concerning their body, that the child must have a trusted adult, identify with the child whom this trusted adult will be. So the child knows who to go and talk to, whether it's yourself, whether it's another legal guardian, whether it's another trusted carer. I have that discussion, with the child. Teach the child that no one should photograph the child's body parts or ask for pictures of their body parts. Sexual perpetrators can upload these online and use these for sexual gratification. This one I feel is really important. Create a code and exit plan with the child for when your child feels unsafe. This code should be just between yourself and your child, between the legal guardian and the child, the carer and the child, and used with the child feels unsafe. So it could be a code that you and the child, arrange together. It can be between the child and both the parents, the child and the carer, whoever's in charge of and responsible for that child at that particular time, whoever's going to be on site with that child to attend, their appointments or interviews or screening, whatever the child's involved in. It's whoever's involved with them at that time. So when the child says the word agreed by both of you instantly will be made aware that something isn't right, that there's something wrong, and you can act swiftly by making an excuse and removing the child from that place to somewhere safe. So you have an exit plan prepared, and you discuss this with the child as well, that when you say that word, this is what's going to happen. We'll make an excuse and we will leave, and then we will discuss afterwards. So the child is informed and is fully aware of how he or she, will be protected and kept safe. Don't forget to talk to boys. Now, it's vital to speak to boys about their body boundaries and that no one should touch their bodies or private parts. Boys also need conversations about sexual abuse and consent, sexual consent. They need to have these conversations and to be encouraged to speak about how they feel, to talk about any issues related to sexual abuse. Society stereotypes of what boys are meant to be like can have a massive impact on how, a young male child responds to sexual abuse. For example, if they hear things like, you're a man, you have to be strong, boys don't cry, and then there's the taboo that boys can't get sexually abused or raped. No, this can be so damaging, so detrimental to a young boy. These beliefs can lead to abusers getting away with sexual abuse and further silencing and suffering of the young boy. I cannot stress how damaging it can be. What do you think a young boy's thought processes would be if they are being sexually abused or have been? That this doesn't happen to boys. Nobody's going to believe me. It's best to keep quiet. What if people laugh at me? I'm a man. I've just got to get on with it. Will people think I'm weak if I tell anybody? So, therefore, these societies, taboos and stereotypes, they need to be challenged. Conversations about sexual abuse need to be normalized with boys. Conversations need to happen so boys can feel safe and comfortable to talk about issues related to sexual abuse and understand that it's not wrong or shameful to talk to someone or to seek help. Educate yourself about sexual grooming and the processes involved. Again, Patrice's project offers a free training course on this subject. Remember that perpetrators can go to a lot of lengths to sexually abuse a child. Therefore, the use of manipulation, being extra kind to the child and their family, giving gifts, money. The abuser may get close to family members to gain trust and get access to the child. So it's really important that you are very vigilant and assertive. This process can sometimes be a slow one, very planned one by the perpetrator or the perpetrators. There might be one or more involved. And the end goal in mind is to sexually abuse the child. Teach the child about grooming and to inform you if anyone in the industry becomes very friendly towards them. Pays them a lot of attention, buys them gifts, gives money, makes promises of developing their career, etc. The child doesn't need to be involved in any of these exchanges, as everything needs to be discussed with the responsible adult and agreed within the written contract. Or you may notice that you are being given special treatment, gifts, special opportunities. Someone's being overly nice to you. What better and easier way to get access to the child than to get access and build that trust with you. Don't allow the child to be alone with anyone, not even the child's manager. Would you go to a supermarket and leave your child alone with a cashier while you shop? No, you wouldn't, because it's a stranger. Why would you? The manager is also a stranger. The same rules apply. Have a written contract stating that a responsible adult will accompany the child at all times. You can negotiate the contract. It isn't concrete. If the child is involved in any business deals, then there will be a written contract, and you can negotiate that on behalf of the child as the adult for the child's safety. You can look at the contract and say, well, these are my terms and conditions as well. It's got to be negotiated and something that you and the child are also happy with and feel safe with. As the adult, be assertive, inquire, ask questions. Is a child suddenly speaking very highly about a particular person or spending a lot of time with someone? If so, who's this person? How does the child know that person? Have you noticed a child with unexpected gifts, money, mobile phone? Where has this come from? Mobile phones are often given to the child by the sexual predator, so contact can be made easily. This is another way to gain access to the child, where manipulation and sexual grooming can take place directly. Now you know your child. You know your child's behaviours. If you notice a sudden change in the child's behaviour, ask yourself what's brought this on. Not that there's something wrong with the child, but what's going on for the child? If you notice a child suddenly becoming withdrawn, stop talking, isolating themselves, or the child may become very angry, aggressive, have loud, uncontrollable outbursts, explore what's going on. Ask the child. If you notice any signs of self-harming behaviour, this may include scratching themselves, punching or hitting themselves, or punching the walls, cutting, biting, pulling their hair out, punching the walls as mentioned before, burning themselves, neglecting themselves by not washing, changing clothes or eating, or behaving in a promiscuous sexual manner, like exhibiting sexual behaviours, sexual languages, wearing sexually inappropriate clothing, which is not age appropriate, or viewing sexual content. Bring this to the child's attention in a calm and non-threatening way to maintain the trust. Because if you react in an aggressive or angry manner, this may cause a child to shut down out of fear, or may cause a child to react towards you as well. Okay. I'm in no way implying that any of the above confirms sexual abuse. That's not what I'm saying, that if a child behaves in this way, or you notice these things, that sexual abuse is going on. What I am actually saying that, regardless, these are concerning things, concerning issues that the child's presenting. Pay attention. When you notice attention, pay attention. The more a child feels safe, the more of a chance he or she is likely to share what's going on with you. I can understand that these conversations may feel very unsettling for any parent or any carer, but the earlier the interventions, the quicker the child can get help and support. By not having any conversations about what you are noticing, the child may never get the support required, and the impact of what's going on for the child may get worse and continue into their adulthood. So when it comes to child sexual abuse and the child isn't being heard or nobody's questioning, or the child feels that they're not being supported or believed, what kind of messages do you think the child then receives? That I'm not important, it must be my fault, no one cares. What's the point in telling anyone? No one will believe me. There must be something wrong with me. I'm worthless. This can result in further silence and impact of sexual trauma. Now, I'm no expert on this subject. I'm only sharing my experiences from the work that I've done and my knowledge, my understanding from research. this is my awareness and understanding that I'm bringing to you, and I hope that this will be effective and supportive for you to learn more about this subject. When having the conversation with the child, remember, let the child know that you are worried and concerned because of what you have noticed. So if you notice any destructive behaviours, as mentioned before, the cutting, aggressiveness, or isolating themselves, etc., then explain your observations. This will help the child know that you care, you're interested, and you want to know what's going on for them. Reassure the child that they aren't in any trouble, they're safe, because this will help the child to also feel safe. Let the child know that no matter what, you believe them and you will support them through any difficulties. Once again, this will help the child to feel safe, to build trust, and will also encourage the child to speak about what's troubling them. It will also help the child to maybe start to make sense of what's happened or what's going on for them. If the child uses the code, ensure the child is safe and that the perpetrator isn't nearby. The safe code allows you to remove the child and yourself to a safe place. So if the child uses the code might be something like tummy ache, to explore whether the perpetrator's close. Say something like, is the tummy ache hurting you now? Is it happening now? Is there any issues now? Something like that, just to get a bit more of an idea that is there something else, somebody around you, and is a perpetrator nearby, just so you've got a sense of the risk factors. And again, this is something that just to discuss with the child beforehand, that if they use this code, then you might ask these questions and this is what it might mean. And if the child says yes, then you might want to make a phone call to somebody else who also is aware of the code, and they can get help and support for you. If the perpetrator isn't close or nearby, then you can make an excuse and remove the child, remove yourself, and leave, get to a safe place and get some help. So when asking the child about why they use the code, so now that you've got the child away from the dangerous area, the risk factors, remain calm, remain composed. This will help the child to also feel relaxed and begin to feel safe as well. It's understandable that you as an adult may feel overwhelmed because of what's been said. That's completely understandable, under the circumstances. Take some time to quickly think, who are my safety networks? So pre-plan that, okay, if this situation arises, these are the people I can turn to. This is my support network, or I have got these contact numbers that I can contact and I can speak to for support, afterwards. Reassure the child that they're safe, they're not in any kind of trouble, and you're there to support them. And let the child know that in order to support them, you need to understand why they felt unsafe, what's going on. If the child discloses any sexual abuse, take note of what has been said, any names, locations, dates, etc. mentioned by the child, as these may be very significant for evidence. If the child gets very distressed, then you don't need to push it, because once you speak to the authorities and contact them, they will do their own investigations. But do take note of anything that the child mentions, even if it's anything very small. Remember that this may be very frightening for the child, as they may have been threatened by the abuser not to tell, or that no one will believe the child, or the child may feel they're at fault. Therefore, once again, offer the child reassurance, let them know they're safe, let them know they're not in any trouble, that their safety is most paramount. That's the most important thing above everything, is a child's safety and the fact that the child is out of harm. This form of dialogue can be very comforting and relieving for the child, and hopefully will support the child to begin to make sense of their trauma, start to self-regulate their experiences, and begin, the child can hopefully begin their healing journey, start accessing the support that they need, the professional support, that's needed for that child to start the healing process. Once the authorities are informed, they will then begin their own investigations and processes. It's important to remember and highlight that no matter what the outcome of the investigation, the child may still require ongoing support and reassurance from loved ones. And during the investigation processes, again, ensure that the child has an appropriate adult with them at all times whom they feel safe with. Okay, so we've come to the end of the training. Thank you for bearing with me and for staying with me. I hope I've been able to provide you with some important skills and knowledge that you can put into action to safeguard and protect children from any forms of sexual abuse in the music, acting and modelling industry, as well as using the skills and knowledge to limit the impact of child sexual abuse. Sadly, child sexual abuse can't be reversed. However, the impact of the sexual trauma on a child can be limited and prevented by raising your awareness on the issues and applying skills from this training and other trainings from Patrice's project, doing your own further research, doing further training, accessing appropriate and professional support for the child, as well as, for yourself or anybody else, because, it can be very traumatic for anybody involved, with that child, who may have been exposed to sexual abuse or been, a survivor of sexual abuse. It's really important that you also look after yourself. Well, thank you very much. Take care and goodbye.